Hey y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates. And we've done a lot of the hard work so far in the process of selling your home. And now we're entering into, for most sellers, the more boring part of the process, and that is the buyer's due diligence. The next step in the process, step number 8, is the buyer's due diligence phase. The buyer is, after we get what's called mutual acceptance, that's when buyer and seller agree, the buyer is going to first of all deposit their earnest money. This is their good faith deposit, and we like to see 2 to 3% of the purchase price as their deposit, which depending on the purchase price could be $10,000 to $15,000, or it could be up to $30,000, $40,000. So it really depends on the purchase price, but we do want to see a nice healthy number there for the earnest money deposit, because we know that the buyer is most likely to continue in the process. The smaller the amount, the less bought in the buyer is, in theory. This is also when we engage with the title and the escrow companies. A quick reminder, the title company is providing insurance on the title of the home. If you've never gone through the buying or selling process, which happens for some people when they're selling the first time, maybe there was a death in the family or something like that, the title company is researching the title and making sure there aren't any clouds or encumbrances on the title. Those could include back taxes, taxes that aren't paid, property taxes. Those could include mortgages that haven't been paid, anything that could potentially transfer over to the new buyer. The title company is going to work with the escrow company, who is more of a neutral third party handling the money, making sure that all of those debts are paid off and all of those encumbrances on the title are removed prior to the transfer of ownership. The buyer's also going to most likely be getting an inspection on the property, and this is their opportunity to really do their due diligence on their purchase and figure out what they're getting themselves into. As a seller, it's also a little bit unnerving potentially, so when we're doing the prep work for your house, we'll talk about some things that we can do to maybe head off some of those inspection items before we even put your house on the market. And if you want, I'll link up a video down below on the conversation about the pre-inspection for the seller and getting your house ready for marketing. The buyer's inspection is probably, if not the most important part, one of the most important parts of this due diligence phase on their end. And this is their opportunity to really know what they're getting themselves into. And the buyer's going to be inspecting the systems and structure of the house. They'll be probably considering the neighborhood and the location. Ultimately, this is the buyer's opportunity to find out what they're getting themselves into, but also back out if they're not happy with what they're finding. And there are things as a seller that you can do to prepare your home for marketing and getting on the market, and also prepare for this inspection. And so those are some conversations that if we were working together, we would have prior to putting your house on the market. If you're really curious to know a little bit more about how this negotiation process works during the inspection, or you want to learn a little bit more about prepping your house for inspections, I'll link up a few videos that you'll find helpful. The last piece of the buyer's due diligence process is obtaining financing. Now, there are other things that are mixed in here in this due diligence process, but the financing is going to be the main piece that's remaining here for the rest of the process. We always look for, as the seller's real estate agents, we always look for the buyer's financing pre-approval letter at the beginning. We want to see that their income, assets, and credit have already been reviewed and received by the lender. So they've already done some due diligence up front. And then as we proceed during the process, the buyer has to provide additional documentation. They have to apply specifically for the loan on this property. And there are lots of different steps that have to happen on their end. And if you've purchased before, you probably can remember back to what that process looked like on the buy side. The biggest hurdles that we're running into on the financing side specifically are the appraisal. If we were to look at anything, it's going to be the appraisal. And a buyer is going to hire an appraiser, and this is at the bank's request, to come out to the property. They're going to look at, kind of like we did for the market analysis, they're going to look at comparable sales nearby, and they're going to do some calculations, and they're going to tell the bank and the buyer what they think the home is worth. We're hoping that they tell us what we want to hear, and that they're telling us that it's worth what the buyer is paying. Occasionally, the appraised value comes in above the purchase price, but sadly, sometimes the appraised value is actually below the purchase price. And this is most common in competitive situations where the buyer's escalating the purchase price and paying more than what we thought it was worth a lot of times, right? We did our market analysis and we come up with a price. If a buyer's paying more than that, we can bet that a lender and an appraiser are going to have a tough time justifying that value as well. So potentially running into hurdles there. There is a process for handling that. I'll also link up a video on that and how that low appraisal process is typically handled. But that would be our biggest hurdle. And once we get past the appraisal, we know that we're pretty much heading towards closing.